Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1602B, and today's date is June 27th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Freedom, Control, the Lights Are On, the Darkness Will End. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we know that the immigration whole debate is being pushed by the corporate media, and we know, and we talked about how really nothing's really changed since Bush, Clinton, Obama. Actually, Obama signed a memorandum which allowed more illegals to come into the country. And we see that Trump went ahead and he signed an executive order where he would allow families to reunite. And we know that 80% of these children that are coming in, which they travel from South America on the train called the Beast, most of them aren't even with their parents. But what's very interesting is that there was a lawsuit that was filed by a group of Democratic attorneys from 17 states and Washington, D.C. And a federal judge ruled Tuesday that U.S. immigration agents can no longer separate immigrant parents and children caught crossing over the U.S.-Mexico border, and also that the U.S. government is responsible for reuniting families split up in custody. And they're saying that they need to do this within 14 days. They need to reunite all the children who are younger than 5 and 30 days to reunite all other minors with their families. So there's more than 2,300 children that have been taken into U.S. custody since Trump first announced his zero-tolerance border policy in early May. Now, what's very interesting is, how do you know who their family is? Most of them don't have papers, and you would have to do some type of test to see if this is truly their parent, because you just don't want to give it to someone else. And are they part of human trafficking? We don't know this, because how do you figure this out? And to give 14 days to do all of this is kind of ridiculous. Now, we know that Trump signed the executive order saying that they're going to reunite these families. But once again, you need to make sure that these children are going to be safe. And these are truly the legal, biological parents of these children, unless they have papers saying otherwise, where maybe they're not biological, but they're taking care, they're the guardians of these individuals. But once again, how do you do it? You just can't say, okay, yes, this is your child, and, the person says, yes, it is, and you just let them go off with the child. I mean, would that ever happen here in the U.S.? No, of course not. They would do a complete background check, and to do all of this is going to take a lot longer than 14 days. But I think what they're trying to do is give them this very short period of time so they can fail. And I think that's the whole entire push here, because they need to keep this in the news cycle and have it continually, brought up every single time over and over and over to keep everything else out of the news cycle. Now, the Department of Justice is refusing to release intercepted material alleging the former Attorney General Loretta Lynch conspired with Clinton campaign in a deal to rig the Clinton email investigation. Now, the information remains so secret that the Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz had to censor it from his recently released 500-plus page report on the FBI investigation of Clinton, and even withhold it from Congress. Remember, who has the unredacted, the completely open report? Trump does. Q has been telling us about this. He knows exactly what's in it. So not even members of Congress with top security clearance have been allowed to see the unverified accounts intercepted from the Russian sources in which the head of the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, allegedly implicates the Clinton campaign and Lynch in the scheme. So we see at this point that Rod Rosenstein, who is trying to figure out how to get this information out there, and he's holding it back. Remember, Sessions recused himself from all of this, so he's in charge. Now, remember, Q has been talking about Rod Rosenstein. He's in trouble. And when we look at this, we can see that, yeah, this is a problem. Even Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch saying that it is remarkable how this Justice Department is protecting the corruption of the Obama Justice Department. And who is in there protecting this? Rod Rosenstein. So Horowitz said that he has asked Rosenstein and FBI Director Christopher Wray to work with the CIA and Office of the Director of National Intelligence to figure out a way that the intercepted material can be written to allow Congress to see it. Now, again, if they rewrite it and put it into their own words, it might skew what it originally says. And he's saying once appropriately redacted to protect sources and methods, then it can be handed over. But I'm thinking that this is not going to be good enough. Now, remember, Q back in post 1556 and post 1550, Q said something very interesting. Amanda Renteria is a bridge between Loretta Lynch and Hillary Rodham Clinton. And in post 1556, saying that Amanda, once again, is the bridge. She knows stuff that went on the tarmac. She's a witness. He said, look close behind Bill Clinton when they're on the tarmac, and we showed that picture before. The Clintons trusted her, and basically, she is the one that has a lot of this information. So we see right now there is a huge problem, and I believe this report, once this is declassified, and remember Q is saying that this is the push right now to get this declassified, once all the pieces are put into place, because right now Rod Rosenstein, he is in a bind right now, because he knows what this says, Trump knows what this says, and we know that Horowitz knows what this says. And again, from the expression of Horowitz when asked about was there a cover-up with Clinton email, he kind of smiled and chuckled. I mean, you can see that there's something behind the scenes which is much, much bigger than anyone thinks, or we know how big it is, that eventually it's all going to come out. Now, out in Afghanistan, we see that the Afghan President, Ghani, he put forth this 1-year peace deal, and the Taliban leaders rejected it. Now, he reiterated Wednesday he is ready to hold direct peace talks with the Taliban leader. Anywhere he wants, anytime, let's have peace. Now, you can see that peace is on its way in Afghanistan, and I don't believe Ghani's going to let up. I think the nation needs to come together. There's been war for like 17 years or something. It's time to end all of this. And if you notice, since the U.S. is really staying out of this and not controlling, the deep state is not controlling this situation, you notice how peace continually comes up in all these discussions. It's the whole entire gray area. We see out in Libya, there's problems once again, and we see the deep state, France, Britain, the coalition forces, they're saying that the armed factions in Libya need to cease fighting and withdraw immediately from the oil installations. Now, what's very interesting, they don't care if they fight against each other. They're saying they need to get away from the oil installations and return them to the legitimate control of the National Oil Corporation, which is part of their system. Now, again, I believe this is Haftar and his faction that has taken control of this. And once again, I don't think the coalition forces at this point have a leg to stand on. And I don't think they're going to abide by this just by them saying this is what you have to do. Because what we're seeing in the Middle East is the people are taking back their countries. They're finally saying, no, we're not listening anymore. You don't control us. We're taking everything back. We see that Trump is out there and saying that he's going to threaten sanctions on any country that is buying Iranian oil after the close of the grace period. No exceptions made for allies. And one of the biggest players in this is India, South Korea, Japan, Turkey, and they purchase a significant amount from Iran. And it looks like the European nations, they're not pushing for this nuclear deal anymore. I mean, they have been, but Iran is looking at them and saying, listen, if you can't come up with the money and you can't support this, we're just going to let it go. And like Q said, and he kept repeating this, is that this is really not about the nuclear deal. It's about the money that was being funneled into there and then funneled into Syria, where they were dealing with the Russians and the uranium and everything else. So we see right now that that whole thing is completely falling apart, and there's a lot of pressure now being put on Iran. And remember, each of these countries have black hats within the country. they have deep state. Even Russia has deep state. And even the UK, Germany, all have these actors within the country trying to control the country. And these are the people behind the curtain. And I think the push here is to get these individuals out of this country, just like in North Korea, where Kim Jong-un now has the freedom to travel anywhere he wants. He was being held hostage in his country. We see Russia is refuting media claims that they're withdrawing from Syria's de-escalation deal. And Russia's saying, absolutely not, we're not doing this. But what we're seeing is that there's a lot of terrorists within these areas, 40% or more, and we have every right, and Syria has every right, to go after these terrorist forces. And I think, once again, this is why the U.S. right now is separating themselves from the moderate rebels, the paid mercenaries, whatever you want to call them. They're all terrorists, and they're the paid mercenary armed forces of the deep state, and they're separating themselves from them so Syria and Russia can go after them. We see that the Syrian Air Force, they have struck the Islamic State along the occupied Golan Heights border, and they haven't done this, and who can even remember when? And it looks like they are pushing their mission forward here. We see over 450 rebels. They've surrendered to the Syrian army in Daraa, and we're starting to see a lot of this. A lot of these moderate rebels, the paid mercenary armed forces of the deep state, they're just saying, something, we're done here. You know why? They don't have the support anymore. They don't have the funding. They don't have the arms. They have none of it, and they're just surrendering. We see that the border is now secure between Iraq and Syria. We also see that the last Islamic State terrorists have been expelled from the northeastern Syria province of al-Hasaka, and we're starting to see that the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, and the rest, they are done for. And as every passing day, there are less and less of these paid mercenary forces inside the country. Now, Q has dropped many new breadcrumbs, and I'm going to go over the question and answer, and that's going to come up a little bit later, of what we thought it was and what it might be. But what's very interesting is that there was a JetBlue plane that was surrounded by police. I think it was going from JFK to LAX, and they were saying that, there was a hijacking or there were some other problems there, but everything was all cleared and the plane was able to, move out and fly to LAX. And Q dropped the post 1588 on June 26th saying, coincidence? Review image location. Nothing provided is random. SFO to JFK, San Francisco to JFK, A321 direct, Q. Okay, so let's review the images Q posted from 1308 that was put up on May 2nd. This was a JetBlue plane that Q put up there, and we're looking at these images. Could this be the same plane? Maybe, maybe not. But we see that the new video of this plane that was at JFK was surrounded by police. They boarded the plane, and according to the tail number, it appears to be flight 1623 to LAX. Departed gate just before 7:30, but never left the ground. Now, what we're seeing is that this whole thing was a false alarm, that there was no hijacking, there was nothing really going on. They're saying that there was a radio communication failure, and maybe that's why they thought it was hijacked. And basically, officers, SWAT-like team, boarded the plane. They had guns out. People had to hold up their hands. And, this was pretty amazing because normally you don't have this type of action. And when you listen to the corporate media and you listen to everyone else, you think it was just a false alarm and there was nothing really on there. But what's even more suspect is that Tony Schwartz was on the plane. Now, Tony Schwartz, the CEO of Energy Project, he was supposedly, allegedly, on board this airplane. And he wrote on Twitter, I am on JetBlue flight at JFK that lost its communications. Created a security crisis. 10 heavily armed cops boarded the plane and just left. After 1.5 hours on the runway, we were being lowered back to the gate. Wow. Now, Tony wrote The Art of the Deal with Trump and was a very vocal critic of him throughout 2016 election. He wrote the following: I wrote The Art of the Deal with Trump. He's still a scared child, Tony Schwartz. And he went on to say other things. So, if I had to guess, the cabal maybe was trying to take this plane down just to make Trump look bad, to frame Trump and make it look like he's using government resources to eliminate his personal enemies. I mean, why else would this happen? And it's just a coincidence, and again, Q says there are no coincidences, that Tony was on this plane. So maybe, maybe not. We don't know as of yet, but that is one theory. Post 1589, June 26th. Now, Q took his post 1588, put it into this, and then went on to say certain other things. And I'm going to go by line and try to make out what all this is. Signal sent, attempt still made, averted. Looks like the cabal was trying to bring down another plane. It fits with the radio failure issue the FAA described, as well as seemingly aggressive response by officers boarding the plane, having everyone put their hands up. Do you believe it's a coincidence extreme rhetoric is being pushed while at the same time Rod Rosenstein is on the brink of collapse? And then he says, define. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is they're going after everyone that's associated with Trump. Think about this for a second. Mitch McConnell's car being surrounded by a mob. Staffers' homes, well, they're being attacked. Sarah Sanders being kicked out of the Red Hen and threatened to the point where she now needs Secret Service security detail. Stephen Miller being doxxed and harassed, and then all of a sudden we have this. Burned and decapitated animal left on Homeland Security staffer's porch, report says. So, are these coincidences? No, I think they're going after all these individuals. Let's continue. Rod Rosenstein in brackets must either comply with all document demands or face impeachment. Now, this is about the Department of Justice, where they're not handing over the documentation. Q is saying two-way failure. If he complies, he fails. Self-implication, known conflict. If he fails to comply, he gets impeached, removed. Ignore the spelling error with fails. He spelt it F-A-I-L-E-S, saying it was a late night and it wasn't, for any other reason. Now, we've talked about this before. Rosenstein is stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's no third way out for him. So I suspect the only thing he's trying to do right now is run down the clock for as long as he can. Why no Department of Justice text disclosed to the public? Q is asking. Because it would implicate Obama's Department of Justice in manufacturing the whole false Spygate narrative. And then Q went on to say, Rod Rosenstein to Loretta Lynch, in quotes, period, a lot of periods. Loretta Lynch to H, don't know exactly who H is, but we'll discuss that in a minute. Same thing, quotes, a lot of periods, and then end quotes. X to X, quote, with a lot of periods, then quote. Now, this is interesting because Q isn't just using periods, he's using ellipses. The first and second are 5 sets of ellipses, which makes me believe the same message was passed from Rod Rosenstein to Loretta Lynch, and then from Loretta Lynch to H. Third set of ellipses are actually 7 sets, plus 2 periods at the end, so that's clearly a different message. Now, this is very interesting. Now, who is H? Well, it could be Hillary, Obama, but usually he uses HRC for Hillary Rodham Clinton. And Obama, he usually says BO and Obama. So that doesn't fit. Or he says Hussein. So H kind of up in the air right now, don't know exactly. Now, H could be Hollywood. It could be hurricanes. It could be Haiti. It could be anything. So who are the X's in this? Same thing. Don't know exactly. Q went on to say, JC to Loretta Lynch, 247X relevant. So if we look at this, it looks like Comey had extensive communications with Loretta Lynch, and I'm pretty sure that 247X represents the number of text messages they exchanged. Loretta Lynch is key, Q is saying, to connecting the White House, Hillary Rodham Clinton, and the rest. So she's the bridge, so to speak. And a new set of initials comes at us here, SP. Because when he says connecting White House, Hillary Rodham Clinton, SP, Eric Holder, James Clapper, and the rest. So who's SP? That would be former U.S. Ambassador Samantha Power. Very interesting. Samantha Power sought to unmask Americans on almost a daily basis, sources say. So she's implicated in this also. Q went on to say, where are the JCAM text messages, Gmail messages, burner phone messages, call pulls? The NSA has them because they have everything. And guess what? They're going to be produced. We're watching the movie play out in real time. They have it all. So all of this is only scratching the surface, Q says. And again, Q says threats of assassination. And we need to refer back to Q Drop 586 for this. What would happen if texts originating from an FBI agent to several internals discuss the assassination of POTUS or a member of his family? So Q is asking, what would happen if texts originating from these agents and other internals, what would happen to them? Well, this is treason. So Q is also saying they are preparing for this by activating progressive activists. None of these protests you're seeing are organic. They are seeded, designed to embolden the masses into more outrageous and violent behavior. And most likely, maybe Soros is behind a lot of this. This is a red line. Q highlights the Mockingbird talking points. Again, refer back to post 643, January 29, 2018. Firing Rod Rosenstein equals red line. Now we see this article from CNN that was put out on April 11, 2018. Firing Rod Rosenstein would cross a red line for the rule of law. So Q has been telling us all of this, and it's going back pretty far, all the way back to January, about red line language. And remember, the deep state, they deal in red lines. They don't deal in the gray area. And if you notice, if you go back to Obama and the rest, they always say crossing the red line. So we see right now that things are really starting to fall apart here, and Rod Rosenstein is stuck. Let's continue with what Q is saying. Once the documents are supplied and viewed by Senate and congressional leaders and the public, they lose. They won't be able to spin it. And here comes the dominoes. Q says setup, scam, FISA, abuse of executive powers, illegal spying, frame, insert assets, prevent at all costs, traitors all, they know, we know. And this is why you hear all of this coming out in different ways around the country, especially with the corporate media, and any of these individuals where they're screaming really loud, they're the most guilty. Now, until the public knows about all of this, everything is still contained, which is why they never want it made public. The people have the power, Q is saying, and the people need to demand the unredacted version of the IG report. So everyone needs to call their reps, they need to sign the petition, they need to do whatever they possibly can to force this and to push the unredacted version of this report. The mainstream media, Q is saying, will portray progressive activists as a large part of the POP. This is false. Q went on to say, no possibility of compromise. Do not underestimate our resolve. We stand at the ready. Q. Post 1591, June 26th. And Anon put up there, SR and JA in June anything. and I believe this is Susan Rice and Julian Assange in June. And Q responded, Julian Assange in the news, think James Clapper, server unlocks Susan Rice, MS-13, phones unlock command and control, ETA estimated it has begun, Q. Now this came out Monday. James Comey personally killed immunity deal with Julian Assange, who could have revealed source of leaked emails. So basically, Julian Assange killed this deal, and basically, they're not going to find out where the emails came from. And Julian Assange has repeatedly said his source for the Podesta emails was not the Russian government. Now, a lot of people think it is Seth Rich, but we don't know for sure. Now, if you're following that through to the original report, linked at the Hill, you'll read the following. The effort resulted in the drafting of a limited immunity deal that might have temporarily freed the WikiLeaks founder from London embassy, where he has been exiled for years, according to interviews and a trove of internal Department of Justice documents turned over to the Senate investigators. But an unexpected intervention by Comey, relayed through Warner, soured the negotiations, multiple sources tell the news. Just a few days after the negotiations opened in mid-February, Waldman reached out to Senator Warner. The lawyer wanted to see if Senate Intelligence Committee staff wanted any contact with Assange to ask about Russia or other issues. Warner engaged with Waldman over encrypted text messages, then reached out to Comey. A few days later, Warner contacted Waldman with an unexpected plea. He told me he had just talked with Comey and that while the government was appreciative of my efforts, my instructions were to stand down, to end the discussions with Assange. Now, Waldman couldn't believe a U.S. Senator and the FBI chief were sending a different signal. So we went back to Laufman, who assured him the negotiations were still on. What Laufman said to me after he heard I was told to stand down by Warner and Comey was, that's BS. You are not standing down, and neither am I, Waldman recalled. Now, of course, you realize this would implicate Comey in the cover-up of the murder of Seth Rich. Q then comes back with a repost of his old JetBlue airline photo, post 1592, June 26th. And again, this was shot of a plane over San Jose International Airport, which is very interesting. He then reposts this image. Again, it's the image of looking at this plane. There's two individuals in this car, and he reposted this. Now, the only thread I can see connecting these images is the thread of hashtag false flags and dropping these planes out of the sky. I had assumed that this was about protecting who was on board, not stopping the entire plane from going down. So, post 1594, Q puts up on June 26th, the Daily Beast, Kurt Schillingback's pro-Trump QAnon conspiracy theory. Q writes, we are a threat to them. And he's saying that they are threatened because they were very nervous about what is coming out. Now, Q then posts 1594, June 26, desperate agencies do stupid things. Dead cat bounce. You may have the site, but we have the source. Panic is good. Panic is right. July 2018, the month the world discovered the truth. So Q is trying to tell us that in July of 2018, something big is going to come out. Conspiracy no more. Time to feed. Q. Now, this is one of the biggest booms that we've seen in a long time. Not least of which because it confirms the long-held suspicions of many Anons and many other people that have been listening to this, that WikiLeaks has long been comped as part of the deep state operation. Now, let's go over this. Now, Assange appeared in an interview, and during the interview, certain things were kind of strange with Assange. Now, remember, a while back, Q mentioned about how they can place one person with another and make it look like one person is speaking, and we put up a video about that. Well, in this video, there are certain strange anomalies on Assange's face. If you look at his eye, you look at his neck where his tie is, what you're seeing is certain things that are like morphing artifacts. These are digital morphing artifacts. And different Anons have spotted these, and they're saying that, yeah, this was a complete and utter fake. Now, what I think is happening here, and we're going to go back to post 1587, when that post said on June 22nd, if you want to see that video, I have that on the X22 Report, or if you're on YouTube, you're seeing it right now. But if we go to post 1587, June 22nd, where Q said Q&A reschedule forthcoming Q, I believed, and I think many other people believe, it was a question and answer period of time. But now, when we look at this, this could be Q and Assange talking together. So this might be Q and Assange, not question and answer. Now remember, the deep state, they took over WikiLeaks, and people are going to find out, I think, that Assange is no longer in control of WikiLeaks. Let's move on to post 1596. Now, Q put up a series of images of planes taking off, shots of the ground and things like that. And if we look at this, these pics were taken over Shanghai International Airport, and Q on the tail shows a picture, and you can see that this is China Airways 737. And of course, you remember that they dealt with the extracting a high-value target from the King Towers in Shanghai. This is going back many, many posts. And I'm wondering if this had to do with a high-value target bringing them back to the U.S. on that JetBlue plane. Was this a rescue operation? Were they pulling Assange out of Shanghai, loading him on a plane and bringing him back to the U.S.? That would explain the non-lethal flashbang residue we saw around the window of the building. Now, this is very interesting. Post 1599. Q came on, and Anon said, need clues. Q says, access to cockpit, frame of shot, expand your thinking, Q. Now, I mean, the pictures look like they were coming from the cockpit when you look at the plane and you look at all this stuff. But once again, when we look at this, this might be the operation, and it also might mean that people have access to the pilots, attendants, air marshals, and government agents with appropriate clearance. Post 1600, June 27th, chatter, trains, buses, be vigilant. And it looks like there might be something happening on these different type of mass transit vehicles where we might see some type of false flag or something like that. And I think Q is saying stay away from mass transit. Q post 1601. Fist pumps, POTUS, Q encounter. Keep up the good fight, patriot. This will be a very common theme known only to you. Feel proud. Hashtag winning. Where we go one, we go all. And then he put up this link to Reddit where someone said that he was wearing a Trump hat where it said, where we go one, we go all. And Trump actually did a fist pump to him. And I think that's what this message is, saying those people who follow Q, they'll know what the fist pumps mean. Post 1602, June 27th. We see Donald Trump Jr. put up on a tweet, congrats to the Democrats who after last night are now officially the party of impeachment, open borders, abolishing ICE, banning the Second Amendment, and unbridled socialism. The Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy is dead. Rest in peace. And Q went on to say, if you continue to proceed down this dangerous path, only know that we are prepared. You should know this based on earlier drops. National Guard, military assets activate on U.S. soil. The game is over when the public knows. The fight to keep the lights off is all that matters to you. You will fail. The American people are awake. You lost control. Sheep no more. You underestimated their resolve and their ability to free think away from the pipeline narrative. We will declassify it all. We will shine light. There is nowhere to hide. No amount of money, influence, or power can stop this. Our rights to secure and protect at all costs then become justified. We stand at the ready. Red wave, white squall. In God we trust. Q. Post 1603, Q put up everything he just said and continued. If you are smart, stupid in parentheses, you know what just occurred at the meeting in Russia. Attempts to frame Russia POTUS are failing and will soon be exposed. In brackets, objective to keep POTUS away from Putin failed. Bolton and Putin should scare you. Enemies are allies. Evil has no place here. America is no longer for sale. The age of taxing our citizens across the world while entry to our markets is free is over. I mean, that's FACTA, GACTA, and all these other things. The world will unite in this cause. Forced immigration pushers will be exposed. The why. Read the Bible. God wins. Q. Post 1604, June 27th. We stand with the good people of Iran who are currently battling their installed regime for freedom. True rule. And I believe there are certain bad actors within this country, and basically what's happening right now, they're routing them out. The people have the power. Rise up and demand they be removed. At some point, military generals will act with the will of the people simply because their soldiers are those same people and have no choice. We stand with you. We are monitoring the situation closely. Stay safe. God bless. Q. And we go back to post 1359, and an anon put up this picture in 1979 about an old salt opens up the pickle factory. And in this post it says, pickle, will Iran expose the names of corrupt officials? Pickle, those officials that deal with the deep state. Post 1346. Now remember, this was back on May 13th, 2018. Pickle, will Iran expose the names of the corrupt officials? Pickle, will the U.S. expose the names of corrupt officials plus con deal? We await your answer. 40 hours to respond, or we tell the truth. On guard. The Iranian deal was about securing a black site to build a nuclear bomb using Ukrainian-Russian uranium to explode in the U.S. and blame on Russia to start World War III. That's what they're saying if Hillary had won. And we know that if Hillary had won, we would be in war already. And basically, it was about securing black sites. And we see right now those bad actors, the deep state operatives in Iran, were dealing with the deep state here in the U.S., dealing with the deep state in Russia. So everything is all connected. Now, if this is a true grassroots uprising, the people will protest peacefully. They will ask the leaders to step down. And of course, how you know the leaders are corrupt and they want to keep control and they're part of the black hat society, the deep state, they will use force against these individuals. And this is what we're looking at right now. Right now, the protests are not that large. I mean, some businesses closed down. They opened up again. We see there were protests in the Grand Bazaar. They weren't as big as everyone was saying. They were in a couple of other towns. But we're going to have to watch this situation carefully because Q is saying that these are the people that are looking to get the deep state out, just like the people in the U.S. wanted the deep state out, which were the Clintons, the Comeys, and all the others behind the curtain. Post 1605. And this is on June 27th, he's saying that these texts are taken out of context. Peter Strzok, text taken out of context. Peter Strzok, while emotional over the election, I conduct myself with utmost integrity without bias while undertaking any such investigation, especially a high-profile case against the POTUS. Peter Strzok, in hindsight, it was a bad idea to openly discuss my feelings, but in no way did those feelings impact my ability to conduct a fair and proper investigation. We followed where the facts took us. Peter Strzok, I decline to answer that question on advice from counsel. When you state where facts led us, what facts are you referring to? To date, there has been zero evidence of any such collusion or connection between the Trump campaign and Russia. In fact, the only facts discovered thus far have been between the Clinton camp and Russia and other foreign groups. Peter Strzok, on advice of counsel, I decline to answer that question. Peter Strzok, because on the ongoing investigation, such answers may violate the security of such investigations. Mr. S, I believe nobody here is buying what you are selling. I believe there is serious effort on the part of the people, more senior than you, to remove Mr. Trump from the office out of fear of what this administration may uncover. I believe you are being dishonest in your answers and frankly shocked you agree to come here today. I believe everyone on this panel, minus those from the other side of the aisle, knew exactly what your answers would be, and if you think we are going to sit here and accept these answers, you should be foolish. We are also following the facts, and once we uncover more, which we will act accordingly. I'm glad you retained counsel. You'll need one, and hopefully they are very good. Now, post 1606, Q came out and put up the tweet by Trump, and Trump says the hearing of Peter Strzok and the other hating frauds at the FBI and Department of Justice should be shown to the public on live television, not a closed-door hearing that nobody will see. We should expose these people for what they are. There should be total transparency. Post 1607, June 27th, put up a letter from Justice Anthony Kennedy letting POTUS know that effective July 31st of this year, he's going to end my regular active status as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court while continuing to serve in a senior status as provided in 28 U.S.C. Section 371B. And Q went on to say, his choice. Remember, Kennedy was the swing vote. No more. Locked and loaded. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is next. And we can see this entire plan now is in motion. Everything is moving forward. And Q is saying that July 2018, something big is about to hit. A huge boom. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.